Is it in the keys? The fingertips that reach out to touch them? The string that begs to be bent? Or is it in the notes on a page? A foot to a pedal? The infinite space between imagination and skill? Or is it simply music?
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the 13th Note Art of Mastery podcast. I am your host, Jeff Spike Wong. Thank you for joining us today. And today we have a very unique topic that I'm bringing you on the 13th Note. And this spawned from my latest podcast with George H. Lewis. He is a master astrologist, as well as a healer, educator, artist. He brought a lot of information out last night on Conversations on the Fringe with me, and it just spawned even more depth in regards to where we are in our society, where we are currently, our so-called political and our financial and our just well-being on this planet. And one of the key factors I think is sorely understated and often misunderstood is energy and frequency. So with that, today we are going to talk about the mastery of your own frequency. Now, what does that really all mean to each individual, all of us? What does that mean, frequency? The vibe, the vibration, as we often hear, And this funny thing comes from all the way back to the 60s, the counterculture, where we had an awakening through our society. And the youth that came out of that start to move forward on understanding things that they were not taught in school, such as meditation, such as New Age. And the thing about New Age is that it was actually put on as a psyop, I believe, to misdirect all of us. However, the misdirection often contains some sort of truth. And that some sort of truth is often what baits us into believing in certain things that we take as in for facts, or for as it is what it should be, the structure or the rule. So one of the things that we want to talk about and start to get into where we're at today in our standards, and also where we're at in our self analysis and behavior regards to the things that we are doing while we're here alive. One of the things that let's talk about is this energy that we generate within ourselves that comes when we wake up. Now, there's a lot of thought process behind this, is that when we're awake, are we truly now in this environment? Or is this simply waking up from a dream, going into another dream, which philosophically has been talked about as well? Or is everything that we're in this reality a so-called matrix that is done by a higher source of intelligence that is pieced together through frequency and energy that causes what we so-called enjoy or despite, or whatever these experiences that we have it's actually a so-called artificial that is actually put together by the matrix for us to experience. Now, a lot of folks out there really believe that the matrix is not just an entertainment in the sense of the movie. It actually is somewhat of a documentary to kind of disclose our existence. So let's take this a little bit further back. Now, for those of you who saw me interviewing George H. Lewis yesterday, if you have not seen that episode, you can go to Rumble channel on ribpills.tv or Rib Pills Project, and you can find that episode and you can hear and see what we were going into in regards to the energy, the driving force. So let's look at where we're currently sitting. Is everybody feeling pretty good? Is everybody feeling pretty much normal, meaning that everything is same as it ever was? Or are you experiencing something much more intense, much more aggressive, somewhat chaotic? I know I am. And what I try to do is find out what is going on with the energy that's going with our existence, whether it's to be on this planet, whether it's to be on this in this universe, in our waking moments here. Are we experiencing something that is more charged than we had previously? And I do believe the answer is yes, because of the astrological alignments, because of this so-called the Great Awakening moment, because it is coming to a fruition of this disclosure that mankind has been in bondage. Is all these things just folklore? Is it just storytelling? Or are we really facing something different? So mastering frequency is important. And I'll explain to you from, let's say, from the get-go. Let's talk about frequency in sense of reality. Okay. Let's talk about what is frequency. Frequency is a pulse that continuously repeats itself and is being measured by hertz. And this is the way to calculate what level of this energy is moving and where is it going. Now, everything's a frequency. As a matter of fact, frequency and energy are like this, right? Not only it comes from the sound aspect of it, it also comes from the light aspect of it. It comes from also the density of matter. So when I say that, let's take from example. I'm going to give you an idea here. The frequency, let's say this. If we were going outside and we look at a tree, that tree exists. We can touch it, we can feel it. So we know it exists in matter. But there's also the level of this frequency energy that created this, build it together in our existence. Typically, trees are vibrating between 10 to 15 hertz. So this is a very low frequency, but it exists. It absolutely exists. And when we're growing the tree, of course, the branches and the leaves and so forth, the frequency actually elevates up to 70 plus. And this is the frequency that is growth. It is bringing energy to the world. Are you following me on this? This is not a hallucination. This is not a theory, so to speak. This is actually proven by science that all living things are energy frequency. Now, our Creator created us and the entire universe with the ongoing expansion of this energy frequency. It is abundantly enveloping as it goes through. Now, how does that compare to anything else? Like, let's go for something that's current topic, artificial intelligence. What is AI feeding off of? What does it want to do? It wants data. The way that artificial intelligence will continue to expand is to gobble up and consume data. That is its entire feeding of that force going into and expanding. So, similar to that, we are expanding and we are moving with the energy with us. Now, there's a lot of things that goes into history of this that I will talk about that is going to hopefully open up your eyes and thoughts in your mind in regards to what we have been dealing with. And this is crucial in regards to waking up from it. Because if you take the understanding of the energy and frequency principle and you start to research and develop how to incorporate this into your life, it will help you tremendously in regards to putting every moment of this matrix puzzle, if you will, into your reality. In other words, all of a sudden, the matter that became what your environment consumes and receives, all of a sudden, it's going to be more to your favor in liking, especially. And this will help you to understand the things that is counterproductive and the things that is total production. Total truth is what we are going for here. So let's go to here. I'm sure a lot of folks out there, whether you're a musician or not, you've heard the term A440. A440, 440 hertz. Now, what is that about? That became the standard tuning, and it was voted in by society back in the mid 50s to regulate the entire planet on standardizing a tuning system. Now, that's all good and dandy. However, what they didn't tell us is that the 440 hertz was converted away from origination of 432 hertz. The 432 hertz harmonizes in sense of the energy of us on this planet. As a matter of fact, the earth itself has a frequency that is 432. So if everything's in harmonization, then of course things will move slowly. Now, there's a faction of this group deciding to change that, to create much more division by separating each other. And 440 was the catalyst to this. Why is that? Well, if you think about the mid 50s, this is where we're coming out of the so-called the radio. Television is just now beginning its first decade, and music seems to be what was the big sensation being embraced by the youth culture, not just in America, but around the world. Because we have the advent of not only music on radio, music and recordings on a record or vinyl. Before that, of course, wax. Right? So now going into this pop culture, which is popular culture for the youth. Now, keep in mind, pop culture, it's never addressing people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and up. So when you hear pop culture, it's often meaning that how it influences and what is popular within the society of the youth. And the faction understood that there's a level of control that they can have within all of us, the people. And how can we create this harmonization so therefore they will continue to create this border or a wall within each other? So by taking away 432 hertz as standard tuning or standardization of A and moving it to 440, they were successfully able to create this division. Now, of course, this then goes into music of the modern day society, especially the advent of the American music movement. Now, the American music movement is somewhat um, groundbreaking and industry leading because we had such a great movement coming out of the jazz era from New Orleans, moving up to big bands and swing, and then of course orchestrals of the 40s, and then going into early 50s, vocalization of ballads and crooners. Then somewhere in between there, the hybridization of the blues music of the African American and their scene and their music being ported and crossing the line to the common Caucasian neighborhoods, mid America, and so forth. And this was the birth of rock and roll. Now, what is the difference between the original rock and roll to blues music? Commonality is the progression is the same. It is a 1-4-5 chord progression. Turnarounds could be changed. Of course, certain things could be moved. But now you can take a song that was written by a black artist working the Chitlin circuit from Chicago all the way down to Louisiana, Mississippi, through the Appalachians and so forth, and able to now to appeal to the white audience by having a white act performing similar structure of the songs. This was infiltrated now into America and then throughout globally. Now, of course, there's several people that came through that era at that time that made its mark. And one of the big things that a lot of people don't really understand and talk about was that the foundation was a little seed being planted and growing. So when we have the black artists such as Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, guys like that playing out there in their circuit, unless somebody heard it on the radio, there just wasn't any white music lovers walking into a Chitlin circuit club. So when radio and records were being made now with an artist that is not a Chitlin circuit artist, but a common fairground artist or a touring radio artist, then all of a sudden the exposure becomes laterally nationwide. And the artists such as Carl Perkins, Big Bopper, Bill Haley and the Comets, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, these are the group of people that start to really move this so-called locomotive of rock and roll music into mainstream audience, become pop music, pop culture. Of course, along with that, the dark force, you've heard me talk about this in various podcasts. The dark force harnesses the energy that drives this behavior that comes with rock and roll. Rock and roll is a very low frequency compared to Mozart, compared to Bach, because the nature of harmonization of structure of melody, structure of the beat, and then of course now with the tuning standard going to A440, it totally changes how we receive the music from the energy it drives in. Now, of course, musicians are pretty savvy, right? So they do things such as tuning their instrument differently, but that is, not the standard in sense of the rule of the thumb. So you have maybe a few artists that is pushing the envelope going half step down or, doing it at 432 still because it just felt right. So number one thing you have to recognize, the hertz, the frequency that is resonating to you You have to look at that. What is it? Why is it resonating to me? Now, one of the key factors that I really recognized as I got into music is that certain bands, certain acts, and certain songs would make you feel and behave a certain way. So let's look at it for an example. Metallica. When Metallica came out, of course, early 80s. And I remember in the early 80s, it was, of course, very happy coming out of the disco dancing, coming out of the punk, rebellious, but it still, wasn't threatening. But we can see that the music is now start to pick up momentum in this generation coming out of the 60s and the 70s in a total different way. Coming out of the 60s, you had a lot of creativity, you had a lot of psychedelic drugs, and you had a lot of so-called experimentation because of all those things in combination. So we ended up with some fantastic artistic work. But the biggest common enemy was it was tuned disharmonization in the 440. Therefore, so we heard the songs, but it wasn't like it harmonized all of us and it felt right. So, with that being the case, as we progressed into the debauchery of the 70s hard rock start to develop out of this art music, the music seemed to be, again, going back into the aggressiveness along with a message of decadence and debauchery. And what is that? Well, because number one, the entertainment business operates off of lower frequencies. You can't tell someone, hey, it's okay to do drugs. It's okay to drink until you pass out. And it's okay to sleep with anybody that decides wants to have, a wonderful night right there with you. And all these things are going away from the Christ consciousness. It was definitely going away from the so called any kind of faith based standards. The aspect of self discipline, the aspect of saving yourself for marriage kind of went out of the windows coming out of the 60s because, again, we were psyoped along with women's rights, along with protest in the Vietnam War. All these things were calculated slowly but surely to affect us in our mental, in our psyche. And if you think about this, anybody who's up there in age like I am, I'm 61. So I grew up in the 70s and the 80s as a teenager and then growing up and then being in my 20s. And what I've gotten out of it is I saw the progression, the aggressiveness of what pop culture was doing with music and movies, and they were pushing it even more into a lower vibration. And what is lower vibration? Lower vibration, meaning that there were things that was not enlightened. There was not things that was bringing us up in the level of goodness or greatness, the expectation of ourselves. And then, of course, there was not the commonality of rejoicing to be with someone, to be in harmonize. Instead, we're sitting there finding ways to become great ourselves, feeding our own self gratification, building our super ego out of the stratosphere because we recognize several things. Number one, greatness comes from what? At that time, mind washing and was teaching us greatness comes from wealth. And a lot of people still believe that. If you have a lot of wealth, monies especially, then you're pretty good. You're great. The other aspect of it is greatness is if you can do something that other people can do. So therefore you're great. And then all of a sudden, because you can do this task, then this level of attractiveness that brings it in, that start to worship the false idol. I was definitely part of this trap, no doubt about it. If you heard my other podcast, you already know the dark forces that I got into, the dark arts. the type of music that I got involved with, especially the energy that I wanted to harness to empower. So when we're talking about low frequency and we're talking about things that it will create false empowerment is key to what we are going to receive in the long run, in the big picture. Now, how many people do you know that was out there, whether it's to be in sports, whether it's to be in entertainment, music, movies, television, whatnot, that put in their heart and soul into the so-called the path and came away with disappointments, came away with nothing to show for it, except for broken hearts, except for, bankruptcies, except for, broken down, just the self is not together anymore. You're just falling apart. And how does that happen with just being in that business or chasing that career path? Well, you have to understand, if you're in a path that you made a free will decision and you take your energy and all your intentions and focus into this path, then immediately your power and your magnetism, your law of the attraction comes to you, is exactly what you are resonating to put out to grab this. So if you are walking around listening to heavy metal music that talks about death, that talks about war, that talks about blood sacrifices, rituals, black magic, on and on, Satan, do I need to paint a clearer picture for you? If you're doing all these things and you're doing it repeatedly, repetition is the mother of all skills. Keep that in mind. Then you are causing yourself these heartaches and these obstacles and pitfalls throughout your life, throughout your path. How many of you started playing a music instrument? Let's just do this. How many of you played guitar in a rock band because rock was the thing, it was going on? And then as you got older, as the music scene started to leave what you were comfortable with, and you want desperately to stay in that business, what do? Number one, you are disappointed and you have this angst, you have this energy that is not favorable because now you're having to step away from what you worked so hard for. So your energy is already shifting just because of that. Now, taking that to a new level. Well, coming out of the party scene of the 80s and going into the 90s of, hey, blue collar sucks, life sucks, not everything's not so good. Look at our world. All of a sudden you recognize that the industry jumped all over this. They loved it. They absolutely loved it. Because why? Again, they can control the masses by grabbing a handful of artists who create this lower vibration, so-called hypnotic mind conditioning music. And why do I say it like that? Mind conditioning music. Think about it. If I play you that song, the same song, and it has a certain feel to it and it has a certain lyrics to it, and play it to you over and over and over for days, many times a day, you're going to sing it and you're going to eventually adapt to it. Even on that particular song that you absolutely despise, did not like, can't see why they recorded it, eventually you will be going, that song's not bad. That's how the mind works. And the people who's been doing this to all of us knows that. So it's important for all of us to kind of wake up from understanding this portion of what is this energy that I'm talking about? What is this energy and frequency that is causing this? So how do I pay attention and understand and wake up from this? Well, number one is, if you're doing the same old, and it's over and over and over, and you're getting the same kind of results, that's insanity, right? Because if you're expecting a different results by doing the same things, then you're not really understanding that you're just going around in a circle. You're looping it. So that's important. Number two is that if your dream is to be a rock star, or your dream is to be a Hollywood actor, to have a hit movie, or to be on stage in Broadway, all these things, these are nice dreams. I'm not saying that don't achieve your artistic dreams. What I'm saying is look at the business structure and look at what it's offering you. Okay. Because the reality of what comes from it is not what you may actually believe that you should have receiving. For instance, you sell 1 million records. You're on tour, you're seeing the world. You got girls, you got drugs, you got all that, and then you go home, there's nothing in the bank. And you realize the industry, the cornerstone has taken all of it. So you got to go back and do it again. You got to write and put all your energy into something that you hope it sell, because if it doesn't, you're going to see it shelved. Shelved means that they're taking you out of rotation and tear up your contract and say, thank you very much, not this time. And then hopefully that you can get lightning in the bottle again somewhere, so you can get something moving, get signed, get a career, and move on. Now, this aspect of it, you have to recognize that you're not in control whatsoever. So therefore, you already lowering your frequency and your power because you're giving away your power. There is no higher source connecting to you because you're so focused in the business, in the industry. So this also works for everybody who's going to work every day, who may be walking into their office and then sitting down. And the first thing is, you're not really happy being there. Why? Because this is not a passionate thing. This is a thing that purely about generating income so I can put a roof on my head, over my head, not on my head, over my head. I can have food to eat, and I can be able to pay for a car to drive, and I can then, own things that make me happy when I'm not here. So your frequency is now muttering and sputtering like this because you're just not connected. You're not focused, and your intention is not driven with your heart passion. That's key. That's huge. So now you're going about it, and before you know it, 10 years go by. You just burned up 10 years of your life doing things that you kept at a very low level, and you wonder why you're having such a hardship on making great life. Why is everything so hard? Why do I have to count nickels when I'm paying my light bill? Why can I not get the extra accessories to my auto? Well, because I just can't simply afford it, despite of how many hours and how long I've been with the company. All these things now start to play havoc in your psyche because it's low vibration, lower frequency. Now, let's go back to the frequency aspect of it. We can hear certain things auditorily, right? But there's certain things below certain frequency and certain things above the frequency that we simply cannot get because our aptitude of what we are built with cannot receive and interpret these frequencies. That does not mean it doesn't exist. So you have to really honor this. You have to really embrace this understanding. It's like if your radio has no antenna on it, you may get a few stations, but you're not going to get all the stations. All you're going to get is static. So therefore, whenever you want something great in your life and you're trying to focus and tune in, are you getting anything? Are you getting still the same old static because you simply do not have your antenna up? Because you're simply not prepared and understanding what is out there available for you. Now, the other kicker, of course, is not just what you can hear, it's what you can see. I mean, think about it. Goodness gracious, that there is frequency that we can see within this certain boundary of wavelength in sense of energy traveling in this pulse, and everything above and below we can't see. Or can we? This is where I want to really share with you the aspect of self awareness in understanding how to harness your own frequency and develop the recognition of energy and how to use it maximum to your life. Because in sense of things that I cannot see in my third density view with my eyes, in my alter states, whether being asleep, where I'm dreaming, or am I in that so-called twilight moment right before REM and going into the sleep mode, you, meaning me, or everybody else who has experienced this, can actually experience interdimensional movements, beings, energies. Now that's amazing to say that, because you can't prove it in sense of, oh, I took a picture. You can now see it. The only proof we all have is purely our life experience. Sometimes that experience is just so real that you can't dispel it to being, oh, it was an imagination. Listen, folks, there is no trick to any of this. There is really no imagination that comes out of nowhere, meaning that imagination is us like painting and drawing, and it's just making stuff up. So therefore, it's just not real. It's just fantasy. That is the furthest from the truth. And they've been hiding this. Who is they? Well, that's another podcast, but I'm sure you can understand there's a controlling factor. And George and I talked about this yesterday, and he really truly believed that this controlling factor on the highest level is a non-terrestrial group. Now, I've been around long enough. I've studied so-called the non-terrestrials, as well as ancient histories and mystics and things of that nature. I started with, Chariots of the God, or Chariot of the Gods, Eric Van Doniken movie in 1970s. So I saw this when I was around 10 years old, and it just kept on propelling. And by the time I was 16, I actually saw my first UAP, or back then UFO. And when you have that kind of experience, there's something that radiates to you energy wise, that something concrete sits within you that you can't deny, because that experience is just as real as any experience that we have here in the third density matrix. Right now, if I raise my hand, I can see my hand, I can feel my fingers. That's my third density sensors. But is there something else that is here, but I can't really see the frequency, but I can feel the frequency of it? So gut instinct is some part of this. This is something that the faction has really taught us not to rely on. Don't believe it. If you can't see it, don't believe it. Gut instinct is a mechanism. It is part of our design, the grand design that our creator gave us to prevent us from making critical mistakes. It is here to help us in harmonizing the heart, the gut, and the brain. Mind, body, spirit. So for all of us who has been involved in this, my hat's off, because you're now pursuing greatness. You're now refining and polishing that ball so you can to see the truth of, number one, who am I, self? Number two, what can I do to help this planet, our human brothers and sisters? And how do we propel ourselves out of bondage that we're currently in for the last thousands of years? Interesting part that I will say, that this moment that we're coming up onto in regards to how this whole thing is going to change, it's been written in the stars. It's in the grand design. So nothing that is about to hit us is new. But if you're not ready for it and you're not prepared for it, it's not going to be the reality that you're going to enjoy, because the low frequency is not going away. The low frequency just isn't going to dictate where we are, where we're going, and where we currently are. That this thing is just not going to sit like this for another 1,000 years. Think about this. The way that we have been infiltrated, especially in the United States of America, this started from day one in 1776. And this has been infiltrated to create this false sense of freedom for all of us. Because if we did have the understanding of frequency and energy, and we were taught this in sense of intention and skill sets, then all of a sudden this whole entire planet structure would be in a very different world to live in. There would be a lot of so-called empowerment to all of us that would drive away this 1% faction who has been controlling us by using the sense of power. And where does that power come from? That power comes from your personal thought, your personal so-called belief system, paradigm of what is important. And this number one, financial monies, wealth has been put forth in front of us to create this belief system. Now, everybody talks about this particular quote coming out of the Bible. And of course, it's often misquoted, which is money is the root of all evil. And the truth is the love of the money is the root of all evil. So see, even in the scripture, it puts you into that position that you're responsible. You're the one that has all the skills sets, the capability, the design, and now you just got to put it all together with focus and intention and make that energy into reality. Can you shift and create different frequency? Are you able to learn about how to do that yet? Or are you still at a point of the emotion drives you? So therefore, the ego, the super ego, is the dictator. This is the crazy person that is driving this buggy and is just slapping the horse and just going, we're going out of control. And then when you wreck and you fall apart and the horse rolls down and the buggy flips, and everybody then gets up and going like, what was that? How did that happen? So it's extremely, I think, trivial in the sense of how we sometimes have this greatness and then we go into this valley of lull of just absolute disasters at times. And then we'll go back into the highs of the highs again and the low of the low. When we just keep on playing this up and down game. And it shouldn't be that, because it doesn't offer us that. In the grand scheme of the universe and the energy, every frequency and every hertz exists, just like water is in the ocean. You can take a glass and pull a glass full of water out. You can move it somewhere else, but it came from the source, right? Now, however, you could never take that glass of water and convince anybody that that water is equally powerful, equally majestic as the ocean itself. Why? Because we have been conditioned to think that. Now, if that molecule in that glass of water is equally powerful as the ocean or the pool, what can it do? It could do plenty. For instance, water can destroy. Water can be savior. It's the duality, just like everything we face here on this planet, in this reality. So it's important now, if you are unhappy, if you are feeling a void in your current life, your reality, that you're waking up every day and you're thinking to yourself, gee, why can't I be like so-and-so? Why can't this happen to me? Why can't good stuff happen to me? Why can't I be better and happier. So there's a lot of self-reflection of driving, of saying, why am I not entitled? Why am I not receiving? Why, and this is continuously beating yourself down into a lower frequency because you're criticizing the grand design of the creator, the grand design of self. Now, if you're religious and you go to church and you do all those things, that's great. You need to borrow that concept in that life and raise your awareness with it. Just because it's there for you does not replace you still doing the work. Does that make sense? You are the one that have to do the work. They are bringing you set of tools, set of environment that is charged for you to do something better. Now, once you're there and you can recognize this, of course, then you realize, hey, this is a grand life. This is fantastic. And of course, you're just like, well, it's because, I believe in, the scripture. I believe in the church. I believe in the message. And everything is now you're giving that to some other reason. And that's okay. I get it because there is the teaching of the stewardship. And you are nothing without, and if you're being taught that, of course, you're not going to have any power. If you believe in that, of course, you're never going to harness the level of power that you're capable of. You're going to be somewhat here. So I would encourage everybody to really deep dive and go deeper within your own personal structure, your own self, especially if you're going to church and you're doing all these great things and you still don't find satisfaction, always finding there's still a void within yourself, within your heart. And you're trying to fulfill it. You're trying to find ways to fulfill that. And you're using a variety of different things. This is, and this is why it kind of puts a damper, especially on great things that churches can do, great things that religions offer. You always have some group that would use that religion thing to use it as a negative powered structure and bring negativity into it. Hence, many organizations are bringing in money and empowering themselves in the wealth and the richness of it. And they're just giving these passe messages to kind of string everybody along because it's a business, and that business is about making money, and that money comes from you. Now, that is a brutal honesty that I know some of you have faced in your lifetime that made you walk away from maybe religion. But that's okay. Doesn't mean that everything is bad in it. You have to really recognize, and this is why this episode is called Mastering Your Own Frequency. Where are you at with this? Where have you been? Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe in coming back into this existence over and over and over to learn lessons? Do you believe that you actually picked your parents in your journey before you came here? Or do you think you're just a happy accident in the great grand scheme of the universe and there's no creator and, you're just here for the ride and this is your experience and you can do whatever the heck you want because it just doesn't matter because look at the TV, look at the movies. Others are doing it, so therefore I can do it. Right? A lot of cop-outs, a lot of just bad decisions when you go that direction. So let's talk about making great decisions. As we were talking earlier about frequency and the hertz and so forth. So we already know there's things with objects that has frequency, that has its own energy hertz that is calculated. So food, it's crucial. It's what we need to kind of grow and survive and sustain this so-called biological suit. So therefore, if you're eating synthetic processed chemistry driven type of product that's done in a lab, you can pretty much assess that this frequency of energy is nowhere near what you need to fuel your energy with. If you're looking at, let's say, plants and flowers, just flowers alone, plants and flowers of being in the hundreds, being from 115 to 220 hertz, depending on, how vibrant, what it is and what. This also goes into, our vegetables, doesn't it? The foods that we eat. So if you're eating that and you're charging yourself with energy, then of course you're going to feel better because you're eating naturally. But if you go to the store and you go into the freezer section and you open up and you get this frozen food, if you read the stuff that they put in it, you realize that there's a lot of stuff you can't pronounce. But the key thing is you recognize that this is manufactured product that does not have the naturalness of these vibration and hertz levels that you need to replenish yourself. Am I hitting home yet with you? Do you now understand why going to a fast food place or ordering food that is just not really natural, but put together with a lot of different components that just is not good for the overall energy take? And I'll give you a real good example. Let's say I'm going to eat healthy today, right? And they teach you this. And this is, well, I'll go into a little bit of that in a second. But you go to a restaurant and you have this thought in your mind. It says, I'm going to eat chicken or fish because it's supposed to be better for you. Number one thing, you got to tell me, what is it so much better because you're eating fish and chicken? You need to understand that. Well, it's less fat. No, that's not true. Less fat has nothing to do with better nutritional value or energy level or authenticity of organicness of actually what the creator has given us to feed off. What does that mean? Okay. Farm raised salmon. Not good. Why? Because they're putting chemical pellets into their food source to grow them bigger and then with vibrant red color. So it looks good in the case when you walk by it in the grocery store. Oh, okay. So it's not coming off of stream, try to swim up somewhere in northern Alaska or any of that. It is in a farm being fed pellets that's made by a company that does chemical research in a lab that produces this product to feed a fish that becomes your source of nutrition, which is no. This is important to know because this is the reason why a lot of us are continuously not connecting and often being underperforming, whether it be physiologically illness or mentally clouding and not making good decisions. Why? Because you can't focus, you can't stay and get the aptitude of empathy because you've been blocked. Now, George talks a lot to me about the fluoride thing in the water, and I have to agree. Water is the easiest thing to get to you. I mean, think about when we were all kids going to dentists, and the doctor, the dentist is telling you, oh, yeah, we're going to do this dye with the fluoride and we're making sure you're going to get, toothpaste and we're going to do even more fluoride on your, checkup. And all. It's just fluoride after fluoride after fluoride. And none of us really understood. Well, what is the fluoride for? What good does it do? It's good for your teeth. If it was so good for my teeth, folks, why am I constantly going back to the dentist when I was a kid? Why do I have so many cavities? Wasn't the fluoride supposed to protect that? I wasn't a kid that ate a lot of candy. I didn't eat that much sweet. So why am I getting cavities? What's going on here? Nobody ever questioned any of this. It's no different than, over 100 years ago, a group of dentists in the organization met and they decided to use mercury for filling for your teeth. Why are you drilling my teeth and filling in with mercury? Who came up with that bright idea? And why was it continuously being propaganda to us as, hey, this is what you need. We're going to need to drill your teeth with the cavity, and we're going to need to do a filling in it. And after we do that, you will be fine. Okay. Am I actually fine? Or did I actually then went through my years in school being somewhat, apprehensive, being constantly in the sense of somewhat of a fear mode? Am I not performing well enough? My school grades are not good. My coach is yelling at me because I missed the play. Is that the life our creator wanted for us to have? Is that the life we want to have? The answer is overwhelmingly no. Why would we want any of this? Why would we want to have a so-called existence of reality that is fueled by angst and fear and disappointments? All these things are negative energy driven. All these things are lower frequency. So what do? What do we all do? We'll go in our room, put on a Black Sabbath record. Okay. And it's funny that people defend this, right? In regards to, oh, no, Black Sabbath is actually, talking about political agendas, and they're going forward, and they're, kind of giving us a so-called the light at the end of the tunnel. They're very creative, no, sorry. First and foremost, if you're disharmonizing in your structure of composition, for instance, you're not doing parallel fifths, octave, harmonizing thirds, those type of things that brings sweetness and togetherness. And you're doing tritones, you're doing flat five, you're doing things that creates this darkness, that disharmonization, dissonance. Then what do you think your cellular level's doing? What do you believe that your whole entire make is giving you back, that is fueling your thought, that is protecting you from a health perspective? It's really too hard because you're asking your grand design, if you will, to fight against something that is overwhelmingly low vibration, low frequency. So eventually what happens? You get sick. Now, what I'm about to say is probably controversial to a lot of people, but you have to think about it. You have to understand, why does cancer exist? And why do cancer never been eradicated despite of how much money has been invested into cancer research? And the other aspect of it is how the people who didn't go into the so-called the chemo and the doctor's prescription and so forth, and they took care of their well-being and recovery by living a healthy life, changing their environment, and changing their diet into natural foods. Don't just believe me. Look it up. Start looking around. Start talking to people. This is why mastering your own frequency is so important to understand, because it does deal with your health, not only physically, but mentally. How many people do you know that you walk up to? Hey, how are you doing today? Oh, man, today sucks. How are you doing today? Oh, it's terrible, man. Do you really want that around you all the time? I don't. And, it's sad to say, there's people in my life that I liked a lot. I actually got along well, but they're no longer in my life. Why? Because they are low vibration suckers. They want to draw you in. They want you to be like them. They want you to have empathy of pityness. And basically, they want you to suffer. Misery loves company, right? So they want you to be that. If you're not that, then, they're not going to be friends with you. Or, you're just, you think too much of yourself. Or there's always an excuse that's been given back, opposed to raising vibration, understanding, and being in self-improved. You go into, well, that person is just, they think they're above us. Or that person is, I don't know, man. They're just, we're not vibing with them. That's true. Of course, you're not vibing with them. You're on a low frequency. If somebody who's in a low frequency is definitely not going to get along with somebody who is vibrating at a much higher, faster frequency. So there's no tricks on that. But let's look at now, if you're not happy about what your reality is, let's start looking at a checklist. Are you making a checklist for yourself every day? Are you looking at how you are approaching life every day? Are you actually understanding what the priority, what needs to be go first, what needs to go second, what's in the front burner, what can be set in the side, what could be simmering, what actually needs to be done right now? Are you prioritizing correctly? Because that's key. That's key. Organization is key to clear your mind. Number one, you need to know that. Number two is scheduling. Scheduling, you need to know that because then you can put priority and sequentially on things that needs to take place. Nothing worse is to try to go from inception to end results and yet not have your path correctly. So therefore, you're constantly going off the rail. You're not going to get results doing that. Well, you get results, just undesirable results, right? You're always going to go, oh, gee, what happened now? What happened? Why me? How many why me's do we have? I'm looking at a clock. Why do you go into these type of situations where you're just going, well, just my luck? Okay, if you think about that, you have just now offered up the energy, the frequency of those words into the universe, into the matrix. Let's just assume, okay? You don't have to believe me, but let's just play along with me, okay? The universe, it's all knowing, all great, because the creator is the universe in the source of inception. So if everything is there and it's laid on the table, literally like the biggest buffet in the world, and it's up to you to go here, I'll take a little of this, thank you. I'll take a little of this, thank you. And put this together, and you have this grand experience of this dining force. That's great, right? But if you don't know that, and you're just walking into it going, oh, well, just show me where the soup is. Because why? Well, I was told soup is good. Okay. But we have all this. Well, yeah, okay. But soup is what I want. Well, we only have one soup, and it's just like, it's kind of like a consomme. It's just nothing. It's not very fulfilling. Well, that's okay. But I've been told that soup is good. And you just can't get out of your mind. You can't open up the third eye. You can't rationalize why that paradigm is just so stronghold to you. So now let's move this to a level that we can resonate a little bit more. The type of movies that we're watching, the information that is coming to your psyche, creating the energy. Okay. What is so great about watching somebody get cut open that makes you squint and go, oh, or squirm and just go, oh, and yet you watch over and over many different shows that do this. What is that teaching you? It's teaching you every molecule and every cellular level to receive this violence, this so-called, aggression and low frequency into your body, right? Cellular levels, the so-called DNA, people often say, we only use a very small percentage of everything is junk DNA. Not true. The great creator is not going to give us a grand design and then go, well, half of it you're just not going to use. It's like buying a car and go, there's a trunk, but there's really no purpose for it. Really? Come on, people. There's a lot more. You need to just start reading and decide to go, I want to be better. How? How can I be better than yesterday? That's a definitive decision that has come from your point of view, your intention to be able to shift a paradigm and hopefully maybe open the door and get out of what was shackling you from achieving greatness. So let's go to that again. If I'm putting in junk, that's all I'm going to get. because that's what's attraction. This is how powerful all of us, individual, as a human, with this grand design. And I can't say enough that they have the faction of 1% convince this entire planet that we're not that. So all of a sudden we're buying into we're only something grand and fantastic if we have wealth, we have possession, we have a certain skill. Hey, you know what? Playing piano is great, right? Just because you can play the world's greatest piece does not make you just almighty, all great, the best human being ever, just because of that one skill. And yet we worship people with that one skill like nobody's business. Basketball. I'm so sick of seeing this comparison of Michael Jordan to LeBron James thing. Really? People, come on. They have made so much money from playing a ball and selling a shoe. What is the greatness of it? Oh, well, they contribute to this, well-being in sense of, greatness to our society by donating to this nonprofit or donating to this need. And really? Okay. Is that it? Is that the grandiousness of it? Or are they taking something initiative? Well, they're doing what they love. Well, okay. But is it essential? I really think that, let's say 1,000 years from now, nobody's going to give a crap how great Michael Jordan is, LeBron James is, or anybody. It's just nobody would care about spectator entertainment. Are you following me on this? It's entertainment from a spectator point of view. Now, if you get involved, of course, you no longer a spectator, you're a participant. Rather be a participant than a spectator, when you say. But, however, is the individual's passion equally as strong if they were not playing for that money? Will LeBron James, Michael Jordan do this for $5 an hour? Or would they actually say, I can't pay rent or mortgage. I can't have a family and kids. I need to get away from this. I need to go do things that is going to empower my decisions and my goals. Right? So all of a sudden, that spectator entertainment thing just doesn't carry a lot of weight. But the 1% faction made sure that spectator entertainment was going to get this stupid amount of power and money, stupid amount of ego stroking. So it really keeps the participants asleep. There's a few that, of course, weren't, that got away with it. And unfortunately, they probably are not with us anymore. But where we're at today, where we are moving forward into the greatness of our lives, into the greatness of our human evolution, we are now start to understand what is truth and what is our journey and our path that we embrace with all our hearts in the balance of self, opposed to modeling after someone that we admire for a skill set that is extraordinary on one particular thing. As soon as we really truly embrace that and understanding that, I think that so-called the veil will be lifted. And then the void that you've been feeling all your life, the void that you feel that it cannot be satisfied, it's like a thirst that you could not quench, will finally be done. Because now you're walking into a different realm. You're going into a different door. You're going into a different truth. Now, of course, this distraction, what we have in the third density matrix, is it true? Of course it is. It's a truth in a lot of ways. But again, this is the duality of they have to give you some truth to give you some misdirections. This is how they can continuously tell lies and get away with it. And I'm being very general because the fact remains that if I start going down the road and saying, hey, this is fabricated for this, and this is fabricated for that, or this is, then I'm going to tell you the first thing they're going to do is bump me off the channel and go, well, you can't say that. A lot of that happened 5 years ago. A lot of podcasts, a lot of truth seekers, a lot of influencers were removed off platforms because of telling the truth. And 5 years later, as you can see, this movement is even stronger than before. They can't silence us. Why? Because by grand design, by our creator, we have arrived. We are here now to change this bondage world. So I hope this episode really hits home. I hope this episode made you think, made you understand mastery of your own frequency, your own energy, your own truth. Because once you go down this path and you start to refine yourself on this, you will find that your life will jump at levels that you never conceived ever in your life. Now, a lot of people who I know, who knows me, still kind of plays this, oh yeah, every time I look at Kiss, I think of you, the band Kiss, because I was a rock guitarist and Kiss was the band that formed my life. But I can't begin to tell you how far away I am from that. Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't, here's a clip, let's watch that. Well, here's Ace Frehley telling some goofy, story. God bless Ace for leaving. That it's amusing to watch him because he's a plumber. So, there's amusement in a sense, but I don't live it, okay? I don't play Creeping Death by Metallica 24/7 or Master of Puppets. There is no Slayer music in my life. I surely don't sit there and play Ozzy Osbourne, by any stretch. And I'm going to tell you, anybody, and I know this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, this Prince of Darkness thing, this moniker that he grew into and basically everybody embraced, came at a price. It did not just happen. Okay. That airplane crash with the mighty Randy on board, you really have to look at that from a different point of view, because you have to know that with Arden family and Sharon and her dad, what they've done in England and so forth, there's a lot of dark arts in this. And if you look at the path of how they did business, how they chew and spit out in usurious ways of talents and not compensate them for any kind of stability for the rest of their life, just usurious. That is the business. And there is no way I would ever give credit to anybody who operates under those principles. And I want you to really think about that. I know I get preachy at times, but this isn't really about preaching. I just needed to hit home to teach everybody really about this frequency thing. I touched on it on that Halloween episode regards to Conversations on the Fringe on tritones and how the church banned it and so forth. Rock and roll was also banned. Rock and roll, the word rock and roll actually came from, having sex. A lot of people wouldn't know that, but a lot of older people like myself would. So before I go, I just want to let you know that we got something really planned big for the 13th Note Art of Mastery. We're going to do a series, hopefully. And this series is going to touch a lot about creativity as an artist in historical point of views in America. So I hope we can finish that development and put it in play. And I hope everybody will come back and join us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I am now streaming live too on not only YouTube, but on Rumble. And then this will replay it on redpills.tv Rumble channel as well. I want to thank everybody who's been supportive. Don't forget, to leave a comment if you got something to say. I read everything. And of course, I take in consideration some things are very inspirational that allowed me to then put it into context and do a podcast on it. I had no idea I was going to end up doing any of this. You just so everybody know that about 5 years ago, I kind of tried out doing podcasting for a few days, about 5-6 episodes in a week. And I remember saying to myself, man, there is no way I have enough time to prepare for any of this, right? And but I always knew the power that I could have in regards to conveying information to everybody, to be able to talk as open as I possibly can on this platform. And with that, in this year of coming into publishing my book, The 365 Method, it just started to line up. Like I said, the grand design started to unveil itself. So of course, the amazing Josh Reed, who is just the walking encyclopedia, great podcast host. I've been following his podcast for years. And the irony behind it is that because of Josh Reed, I was introduced to a lot of other great podcasters that was his guests. And slowly but surely, I became a podcast listener. And through podcast listening, I realized that, hey, I'm no longer sitting in front of TV with the mindless episodics. I'm no longer wasting my time on things that just were not productive. I start to get inspired. Okay, like what? Well, women who fight for freedom. They were doing things for children that was being abused coming across the border as illegals. So I wasn't aware that was a problem. Now I fully understand that was a huge problem, and little things of understanding our legal system that was never even in my mind before. Now all of a sudden I understand financial aspect of it. Never really gave a crap other than just make. Now I understand how things are actually working. Of course, I was one of the few people that always said, no, I'm not trusting crypto. And after many deep dives and, of course, learning about crypto, I now as investor of crypto as well. But I did not neglect precious metal of gold and silver because, realistically, the only thing that is fake is fiat. And this is the thing that's been controlling all of us for well over 100 years. So all these things to be said is that knowledge is power. And to be able to raise your vibration, your frequency, and your energy level, you're going to be able to assimilate and digest information with so much more clarity, with so much more intensity, and definitely with so much more heart. And that's going to be able to bring you into the new level of consciousness. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And stay, of course, well-being, mindfulness, empathy to your fellow humans, and an abundance of love to be able to share, to be able to receive, and to be able to live the fullest of your life. And I thank you for tuning in. Everybody be well, and I will see you on the next podcast. Thank you. And we're going to play the outro with that, right?